Welcome to A Taste of AZ podcast. My name is Luke Irvin, and today we've got an epic episode lined up for you. But before we jump into that, just want to let you guys know real quick, we've got some brand new merchandise up on our website, including these Thanks for Supporting Local hats and 2 new shirts as well. If you like today's episode, please also leave us a review on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow our email newsletter. With nothing else to say, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, A Taste of AZ listeners. We are here today in North Scottsdale, right by, Frankwood, right, where it turns into Bell and Scottsdale Road. And I will let my 2 guests introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Richard Rangel, executive chef and part owner of Famiglia. And we're happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Brock Chavez, sommelier and part owner here at Famiglia. It's a pleasure to join you.
And of course, we will get into the weeds of it as we go along. But what exactly is Famiglia?
So Famiglia is the concept that Chef Richard and I came up with. It's kind of that perfect marriage between food, wine, beverages, and the people around your table.
And would you agree with his description of the restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea behind it was to kind of change how people eat Italian food in America. We're not the place where you're going to come and get chicken parm and marinara. We wanted to take those old world recipes from Italy that I've learned along the way and bring them here to Arizona with modern twist on them.
Okay. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording about your background and how you got to this position. You didn't start in the kitchen. Would you give us a little bit of your history?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a butcher for about 40 years. He worked at Bash's in the meat department for a long time. And that was my first job working with him as a cleanup in the meat department. He was hard on me. I mean, I would be going to work and he would be waiting at the front of the store for me to get there.
Oh, really?
Like at the entrance of Bash's. So I worked there for a little while as cleanup. Eventually he started teaching me how to, cut meat and break down certain parts of meats. But then eventually I didn't want to work with him anymore. It was just too much.
I could see why if he's waiting for you to get there like that.
Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, that shaped me, and also my mom, her morals and values shaped me to be the man I am today.
Nice.
But yeah, I worked with him for a little while, and then I worked at Mimi's Cafe. I don't know if you've heard of Mimi's.
Off of Shea, right?
Yeah, there's one in Shea and Chandler, but I worked at the one in Ahwatukee. It's not there anymore.
Okay.
But I started off as a server. I bartended there. I was a shift manager. I dishwashed there. I literally did everything except cook there. Then eventually I went to Gallagher's on 32nd Street in Baseline and bartended there, served there. And then I started to look into culinary because I wanted to start cooking. I've always had a passion for it, but it was, like I said earlier, it was a process of making $300 a day, going to working in the kitchen, making probably at that time, it was probably like $11 an hour.
Wow.
So my sister and my brother-in-law were living in Connecticut. He was stationed in the Navy. And my sister was like, just go to culinary school out here, move out here. So I was looking at it, and Johnson and Wales was a school I was looking to go to. And I just made the commitment, moved out there, but then realized it was 2 train rides. It was about an hour and a half, and it was $65,000. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. It's too much. So then I just started looking for a job as a dishwasher, and no one would hire me. They're like, why would you go from the front of the house wanting to be a dishwasher? It makes no sense. So no one would hire me. I would go into
Why did you want to? Just to get into the kitchen?
Just to get in the kitchen, just to get a start. Because no one would obviously hire me as a line cook because I had no experience. I would go to interviews and they're like, why are you wearing a tie? Why are you dressed up? I'm like, aren't you supposed to be dressed like this? Trying to get a job. And then finally someone hired me as a dishwasher at this place called Rustic Cafe, tiny spot, but it was always busy. I think I was getting paid $7.25 an hour to wash dishes by hand. We'd do like 120 covers a night and washing dishes by hands. I was soaking wet. But I liked it. I enjoyed it. And then I washed dishes there for about 6 months, and eventually the chef there at the time started showing me how to do things. It was funny because he looked like a pirate and a biker mix, so you didn't think that he was like a chef. He was crazy. His name was Steve. But he taught me a lot, the basic skills and stuff like that. So I cooked after I started washing dishes. Then they put me on the line. and I was working for a while. And the sad thing about Steve was he was like on his way out of his career. You know, he had been cooking for, I think, 35, 40 years. So he was on his way out. And he was getting burnt out, and eventually he quit or retired. And then they gave me opportunity to run that kitchen.
Wow.
So I was only probably about a year cooking, and then they offered me the position. I didn't want to say no because, you know, I like taking challenges in my life. So I definitely was not ready. I was not ready to take the position, but I did anyway. And it worked out fairly well. You know, the kitchen was progressing. I ended up hiring one of my good friends in Connecticut, Fernando, because he had more experience than me, and I brought him on, and he helped me out, and we really took that place to you know, a better position. And then at that time I was running that kitchen. I was working at another kitchen for free. I was washing dishes for 2 months for free, just so I could learn, so I could be in that kitchen.
Wow.
And then eventually they started letting me cut vegetables and stuff, and still was not getting paid, but I didn't mind it. I wanted to learn. And eventually they started paying me. They put me on the line, but the only thing I could do was make mashed potatoes to order. So I would sit there and peel potatoes, put them in water, and then I had 3 electric induction burners, and I would sit there and peel potatoes, put them in there, put them through a ricer, butter, you know, heavy cream, salt, and pepper. And the chef was like, even if we don't use it, keep making it, because if I need it, I need you to have it ready. So that's all I did for that.
I bet you make some mean mashed potatoes now.
Definitely mastered, you know, making mashed potatoes, and I learned a lot from that kitchen. And then eventually I went to a place called On the Waterfront, owned by an Italian family, local restaurant. Steve Schiavone and Anthony Schiavone were father and son, and Steve was a huge like name in New London, Connecticut. And their restaurant was always busy. And I literally live like a 5-minute walk from that restaurant. So I would go eat in there. And finally, I went in there and I asked if they were hiring. And they said no. So eventually, I became cool with the bartender. So that was my way in. And eventually, you know, they knew I was running that other kitchen. They came in and ate. And then after that, that's when they ended up hiring me. And that's when I really started to learn the real ins and outs of a really big kitchen. Because like I said, we do probably 200 covers a night. I remember on Mother's Day one year, we were at like 425 people at 3 o'clock.
Wow.
And then the owner came in and he looked around. He was like, yeah, you guys are done. He was like, I'm cutting all the reservation off. I'm telling everybody to leave. And he told everybody in the restaurant to leave.
Wow.
And just told us we were done. But he knew his name was so big out there because he did so much for the community that people were going to come back no matter what. But he was a really great person to work for. I remember when I had my son, I took 2 days off and I showed up to work. And he was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I'm coming to work. And he was like, you don't need to be here. And then he went into the office and I kept working. He came back and grabbed me by my shirt. And he was like, go home. And he gave me a check. And he was like, don't come back for a couple weeks.
Wow.
So it was, I learned a lot as far as like the culinary aspect, but also how you should treat your employees.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when I met Brock and we decided to open up this place, that was another one of our goals, was to take care of the employees and try to change how, you know, people get paid in the back of the house. You know, dishwashers, that's been one of the biggest struggles, is finding a dishwasher. I mean, we can't find it. Thank God we finally found one recently. But it's, you know, making sure that everybody in the restaurant is taken care of and treated properly.
Sure.
You know, I've worked at restaurants where, you know, especially, you know, illegal immigrants are taken advantage of, knowing, you know, owners knowing that they need the job and they're not going to, you know, really fight how much they're getting paid. So that was one of our goals, is to try to change how people in the back of the house are treated and paid, and also in the front of the house too. But yeah, so then after I was in Connecticut, I moved back here to Arizona for a couple years, and then I leased out at a bar called Cactus Jack's. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's on,
I feel like I might have.
It's like a music venue, sports bar. It's on 48th Street in Elliott.
Okay.
And I signed a contract and leased the kitchen out there. That's when I started to learn, you know, it's on your dollar, you know, because I had to pay rent, I had to hire employees, you know, buy the food and stuff.
It's amazing how much quicker you can learn when you're burning through your own
when
cash.
It's on your own money, you look at things a lot differently. And that's what, you know, really helped me out as far as now with us being here. So I did that for a year. It was kind of a disaster because I had no control over the front of the house, because I just, controlled the food. But it was a great learning experience. I worked 7 months without a day off. I'd go to work at 10 o'clock in the morning, not leave till probably midnight. And that was brutal. That was crazy.
Absolutely.
But it was a great learning experience. I wouldn't change it. Then after that, I started working at the Princess. I was at the Princess for about a year and 10 months. I was working in the banquet kitchen over there. And that's when I met one of my mentors, Chef Charlie James and David Morris. One was the executive chef, one was the executive sous. And that's when my career really started to take off, really took shape. I learned a lot at the Princess. And then I started running a kitchen in North Phoenix called Tommy's Place. Tommy Morano he has probably had like 20 restaurants here in Phoenix. He opens them, builds them, and sells them. And Tommy's Place was supposed to be his last hurrah. A beautiful restaurant. The guy was a tough person to work for. He was a tough cookie. He's from New York, but I learned a lot from him too. The biggest thing that I learned from him was to, if everybody's not doing their job, it doesn't matter what you're doing in the kitchen. If the front of the house is not taking care of the guests, if the host is not, greeting the people properly, it doesn't matter what you're doing, because at the end of the day, it's a team, and that's one of the biggest things that I learned from him. Then after that, Charlie and Chef Morris moved to Texas to help kind of revamp a resort, the Woodlands Resort in Texas. And Charlie bugged me for about a year to go out there. And I was like, I don't want to go to Texas. I don't have no family out there. I don't know anybody. But finally, I decided to make the leap, and I moved out there. Worked in a steakhouse over there for a little while, and then they made me the executive banquet chef, which that's another situation. Like, I worked banquets here for about a year, and now they gave me the banquet chef position. I wasn't ready for that either, because banquet's a different animal,
Sure.
You got a lot of people you got to manage. Timing is huge, to fire food right before it's going out, put it in the hot boxes, keep making sure that sauces aren't going to, get too cold, too hot, so there's different, it's a different animal. So they gave me that position, and I kind of fell on my face a couple times. And I remember talking to Charlie, and I was like, why did you give me this position? He was like, I wasn't qualified, because they had other people that were coming in, trying to get the job. He was like, I knew you would be able to handle it. And I did that for about 2 years. And then, so Howard Hughes was the company that owned the resort that I worked for. So technically we worked for Howard Hughes. And then they were opening up an Italian restaurant, a high-end Italian restaurant at the Westin, which was our sister property. And they were looking for a sous chef there. And I remember that's when I met Enzo Forgione, which was another one of my mentors. Amazing chef, great guy. And he came in and did his tasting at the hotel. And I was blown away. Some of the stuff that he was doing, like Italian food, never seen before. And I remember I was just watching everything he was doing. Then after his tasting, he was like, what's your name? He introduced himself to me, talked to him for a little bit, and then that was it. And so I was still doing banquets, and at that time they were making me work the steakhouse and do the pool. And people know, if you've ever worked at a pool at a resort in the summer, it's crazy, because all the families and chicken tenders and hot dogs and burgers galore. And so I was doing that for a while, and then Charlie came up to me and he was like, they want you to go to the Westin and help open that Italian restaurant. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And then I met with Enzo and talked to him, and he was like, the only thing that I don't like about you. And I'm like thinking in my head, how do you not like something about me? You don't even know me. He was like, I looked at your time card and stuff, and you were working like 90, 80 hours a week. I was like, he was like, is it because they're making you, or are you unorganized? And I was like, this guy is really, trying to find the answers in who he's about to hire. So eventually took the job with him. And
what was the answer?
It was, they were making me. So, I mean, that resort was busy, and one thing that I've learned, when you're good at your job, they want you to be there. So that was another thing. I mean, working those hours, it's tough, but it's also, I love what I do. So then we went and opened up the Italian restaurant. We tested recipes for about 2 months before we opened up. It was from the ground up. They tore up the restaurant. Everything was built from scratch. It was like a $9 million project going into it. We had probably about 20 people in the kitchen, another 30 in the front of the house. A beautiful restaurant. And, homemade pasta, everything from scratch, the pizza. And I did that for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then I was like, I need to go back home. I missed home, missed my family, and started looking for jobs here in Arizona. And then that's how I ended up hooking up with Brock through Indeed, like he said, and did an interview with him. And I wanted to get away from the corporate setting. I wanted to start doing, my own thing. That was my whole dream and goal, was to get my own restaurant. And then I met Brock in Fountain Hills, tiny restaurant. I mean, Fountain Hills, there's really, in the summer, I think the community kind of helped us out a little bit more,
With COVID, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely COVID.
The town of only 20,000, they really pulled through to help us out. So.
And it's kind of isolated relative to the rest of the valley, like physically isolated via mountains and whatnot. But even from, me, where we are now, it's like, 25-minute drive to where you guys were before?
Correct.
From here, yeah.
Not too far, but definitely a journey out there.
Sure. Especially if you're just going to dinner or something like that, if you don't need to go out there.
Exactly. And that was the thing that Brock and I were talking about, is it was more of like a destination for us. And the clientele, like Brock said, I remember during the pandemic, like, it was crickets. And I remember looking at Brock, I'm like, what are we going to do? Like, and at that point, we started doing to-goes. And I remember he brought in a small smoker, and he was like, do you know how to make barbecue? And I'm like, yeah, I can do it. We were making jerk chicken with, rice and peas, and we're doing smoked brisket. We were doing anything and everything we possibly could to try to figure out how to stay open.
There was meat shortages, so we didn't know what kind of meat we could serve each day.
You can laugh about it now, but back then it was stressful. It was really stressful. But like Brock said, that community out there, kind of kept us afloat for a while. We were doing like to-go family meals with, bottles of wine and stuff like that. And that kind of kept us afloat. And after everything started to come back, that's when we started to talk. Like, do you want to get a bigger place? Fountain Hills isn't the place to be. And Brock had been out there for how long?
About 3.5 years, almost 4 years.
So let's go back to your kind of, how did you get into the industry?
So I went to college for mechanical engineering, got my degree, did that for a couple of years.
Totally a normal restaurant business thing to study.
That was awful. So got into the restaurant industry, was a barista in college. So opened up a coffee shop in San Diego, ran that for 5 years, sold that in 2019. So quite prescient timing, but moved back here to be closer to family. Grew up here, born and raised about 10 minutes from here.
Okay.
So all my family's here. And decided to move back here, open a place in Glendale, actually. It was a beer and wine bar. Tragic event. Kid crashed his mom's car into the front of the building.
Wow.
Got condemned after 2 months, so ended up having to close that place down. And then a couple months after that, found the place in Fountain Hills. Got that up and running, and then after 2 years started looking for chefs. After a few different tries, brought in a chef consultant. That chef consultant helped us find Chef Richard.
Nice.
And Chef Richard came on board, brought in a sous chef from Texas, and we were rocking and rolling for about 2.5, 3 months until, I guess March 17th was when the world stops. And
so going back to the coffee shop, you said that you were a barista. Did you love coffee, or did it just kind of make its way into your life?
A little bit of both. Just kind of jumped on that board in college, and then it was kind of a rabbit hole that just kept on going and going. And we do have an espresso machine coming to this location. It is on a boat somewhere in the Pacific, so we will have high-end coffee here eventually. Right now we're just serving pour-overs with a local roaster press.
Nice.
But make do with what we got.
Brock always looks down on me when I bring Starbucks in. So
Oh man, I brought Starbucks in today too. Sorry about it.
It's all right.
I was a little bit nervous about it. I always am, because it's like, I have the whole support local thing going, and then I bring Starbucks. It's just so convenient though,
No, I know
There is actually the new press. What is it, over by like Raintree and the 101 going in? Unfortunately, no drive-through over there, but that'll be nice. A convenient little local spot I can go to.
Yeah.
But as far as the coffee shop, like, it sounds like that was your first entrepreneurial endeavor.
Correct.
What is that like, getting into owning a business for the first time?
So the initial goal was to open a brewery.
Oh, really?
Started shopping around, seeing what that looked like, and at $750,000, it just wasn't really feasible at the moment. So figured start small with something I could do myself. So
It's still a brewery in a way, right? Just not brewing beer.
In a sense, yeah. Getting an alcohol license, liquor license in California was quite difficult at the time. So just focused on coffee. Ended up expanding, opening a kitchen next door after the first year. So started with 400 square feet, doubled to 800 square feet.
Nice.
But we're 3 blocks from the beach. Beautiful little location, but really just, semi-similar to our focus and ideals here, keeping it as local as possible, organic, fresh. Coffee isn't necessarily grown anywhere nearby, but
Sure.
you want it roasted nearby just for freshness. That's my big issue with Starbucks.
Okay, yeah. Well, and you do notice a difference, and it's not only, and this is not meant to become a podcast about Starbucks, but with local places in general, like, you can hear that you care about the drink that's coming out of it. I get Starbucks however often, and I probably complain about it 8 out of the 10 times that I get it, because there's no consistency and there's just not the love in the drink, and that makes me angry. But then I go ahead and buy one again because it's so convenient.
You go back the next day.
Yeah, it's so stupid that I do that. But hey, you're gonna do what you're gonna do. We get into our tendencies. But why did you decide to sell the coffee shop?
It was just I was having to fly back to San Diego once a month. Do bookkeeping, hiring, firing, fun stuff like that. So San Diego wasn't fun anymore. So put it on the market, and luckily I had some great managers that were able to take care of it for me while I wasn't there. But it was basically running itself. So it was kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, time to let go. So sold it at middle of 2019. So no idea that the pandemic was coming, but thank God, because
Sure.
California was even rougher than Arizona. Luckily it's kind of the Wild West here, and we had lockdowns for a month.
Yeah, somewhere around
I think
there.
middle of May we were able to open back up for in-person dining back in 2020. So love California, don't like the prices. So
Yeah, sure. And it seems like Arizona is just a good place to do business in general. Would you agree with that?
absolutely,
Fountain Hills too?
more or less.
You just gotta have the right business over there. You gotta have.
Sure.
And I think that's where we decided, because we wanted to go for that casual fine dining atmosphere, and I just didn't think that it was the fit out there. You gotta have technically foodies, that want to experience that. And I don't think that out there that they were really wanting that experience. So
Sure.
It was, I think it was time for us to go.
Well, I want to dig into kind of your past a little bit more, but let's take a quick break and get a message in, and then we'll jump back into it.
Okay.
Sure.
Real quick message for you guys. If you guys are enjoying today's episode, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our email newsletter for all of the cool spots to eat and drink around town, as well as upcoming events and fun stuff like that. Also, we've got some brand new merch on our website, including these Thanks for Supporting Local hats and 2 brand new t-shirts. So make sure to check out our website for more. Now back to the podcast.
A little bit more about your past before we dig into your guys' collaborative efforts. You mentioned that you opened the beer bar, and that kind of came to a quick and tragic end. What is it like, investing all that time, effort, money into something, and then to have that happen?
It's very frustrating, very depressing. You put a lot of work and effort into scouting a location, researching a location, and then actually opening the location, going through all the steps of, all of the legality stuff on the back end, and then just to get a landlord saying that your building's condemned and you're getting kicked out for the foreseeable future. And now that was 5 years ago, and the building's still condemned.
Really? Wow.
But the landlord's still squatting in the hotel next to it that's also condemned. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, eventually things took a more positive turn, and then kind of a negative turn again with COVID and whatnot. But let's kind of focus more on this spot. So you guys explained how we transitioned to this new location. Describe a little bit of the difference between the old spot and the spot that you guys are in now.
I would say the place in Fountain Hills, it was called Aguamente. I would say it was more of a bistro, kind of more laid back. Still, focusing on the cocktails and the wine and stuff. And then, when I took over, obviously I can cook, an array of different foods, but Italian food was just always something that I came back to, especially working on the East Coast. There's a lot of Italian spots out there.
Do you have Italian heritage?
I do, yes.
Okay.
And I've stepped away from it, but it's just, I feel like it just runs in my blood. I love pasta. It makes me happy.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, exactly. So when I took over with Brock, I told him that I wanted to, aim towards more, as much local produce as we possibly can, and aiming towards more Italian stuff. We would do some specials here and there, Mexican food, stuff like that, some French influences, but it was mainly towards Italian food. And then when we got this place, that was the goal is to open up an Italian spot. There's a lot of great food out in Arizona. But our goal was to open up an Italian restaurant that focused on old world recipes. Like I said earlier, with modern twist on them, techniques that I picked up along the way in my career. And then in Italy, they use what they have, whatever's in front of them, whatever's around them. That's what they use, and that was our goal here. All of our produce about now, I would say 98% of it is from Arizona.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, all of our farmers, we get certain different things from certain farms. We work with a company called Sun Produce. It's a co-op. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I think I have, yeah.
So we get all of our produce from them, and then I've also talked to other farms individually. I've been to the farmers market recently. Make some connections with them, and actually talk to some farmers that are going to start growing stuff specifically for us.
Wow.
And I was on the phone with Duncan Farms, and they're growing spigarello. I don't know if you know what that is.
Is it a grain?
It's a green.
A green.
Yeah,
okay.
And they use it a lot in Italy, and I've been telling Brock I've been trying to find it here. And then just today they texted me and said that they had it. So I was like super excited about that. But yeah, it's just focusing on what we have here in Arizona, which I was kind of blown away by some of the stuff that's grown out here. I remember when we first opened up, we were getting grapes from a farm, Pinnacle Peak Farm in South Phoenix. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anybody grew grapes out here.
They have dates over there too.
Yeah, they got dates. They've got
stuff.
some good stuff over there. Artichokes. I remember when we got those artichokes. I was blown away by these artichokes. I mean, I've never had an artichoke that was just, I don't know, it was sweet. It tasted like sunflowers. It was really good. So yeah, I mean, the focus is just whatever we have here in Arizona, use it. Our beef that we use on the menu is all local from Prescott. Obviously, our fish is not from here.
Sure.
So we work with Jet Fresh. They're out of Tempe. James is the owner, and he's been great with us, helping us out with, menu ideas, because he was a chef before also. So that's also good when you have a purveyor that has that background to, give you ideas, or, and he's helped us out with prices too, and, we'll order it yesterday and it'll be, alive yesterday and fresh to us today.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just focusing on that with the food. And then Brock took over the wine list and, really did his research. And I feel like, everything, combined together was just everything that we wanted to do. And now we just got to get our name out there and get people to try the food. And
absolutely.
But yeah.
So we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast when you introduced yourself, you're a sommelier. You mentioned that now as well. How did that come into your life?
It was just kind of one of those things where I was tasting a lot of wine on a daily basis for wine reps bringing in whatever samples they're trying to hawk that week, and felt like I should have some of my own personal study rather than just what the wine reps are telling you.
Confirming what they're saying is true. Yeah.
Correct. And so it's just kind of evolved from level 1 to level 2, trying to figure out how to get my level 3 in, just because the only time they do it is in Saturdays in Long Beach for like 6 weeks, so it's a little bit unfeasible
for all the restaurant people trying to get that right.
Unfortunately, I can't take off Saturdays just yet, so eventually that'll come about.
And you're saying level 3 is your next level, right?
Correct.
And then is master after level 3?
That's correct.
Do you hope to become a master somm someday?
Maybe.
Yeah.
There's at some point the quality is not really there. The benefits don't outweigh the costs, I guess you could say.
And why do you feel, I mean, it's obviously not too hard to draw the conclusion, but why do you feel it's important to have that type of accreditation?
Just so I can, give my guests the best quality product. Last summer I traveled to Italy, went around Tuscany to a few different wineries that we already carry, a few new ones that we brought in. So really, similar to how Richard's meeting up with the farmers here, unfortunately Arizona's wine scene isn't quite like how Italy's is.
Sure.
And so we've focused on 100% Italian wines just because we feel like that's going to pair best with our food.
Sure.
And anytime we can find a more hands-on producer, whether it be, we carry this wine that's made by a husband and wife with a team of donkeys. So the smaller the winery, typically
Like
the better.
donkeys are the winemakers themselves? Because that would be pretty incredible.
A lot of farmers will use like tractors and stuff in the field.
Sure.
So they use the donkeys to till the fields. So small operation, very hands-on, just, what we're focused on as well.
Mm-hmm. And so how difficult has that been for you? Was it relatively easy for you? I mean, you seem like a smart guy with your mechanical engineering degree and all that.
It's definitely been a learning curve trying to figure out how to taste, different compounds in wine and put a name to it. I don't know when's the last time you smelled a lychee, but you're supposed to know what lychee smells like because you're going to smell it in wine type of thing.
The last time was never. I don't think I've ever smelled a lychee before. Even
Exactly.
in wine, so I'm not a sommelier in training, though. So you mentioned, you didn't want to do... You wanted to do old world cuisine with a modern take, I believe is how you described it. You used chicken parmesan as an example of kind of what you don't want to do. What is the difference between, how Italian is served now versus your guys' take on it?
So, I mean, if you go to Italy and you're ordering food, like they have like, a chicken Milanese or something like that, and we've done our modern variation or a different variation on that. But I mean, you can go to a lot of restaurants out here, and by no means am I saying there's anything wrong with that, because I love it myself too, but we wanted to kind of stand out a little bit more.
Sure.
And then we've also had that problem when people come in, like, why don't you have chicken parm? Why don't you have chicken marsala? Like, can I get pasta with my steak? And we wanted to stick to that. The eating, how people eat in Italy, it's smaller portions and it's coursed out. So if you look at our menu, it's coursed out as far as like antipasti and pasta primi, and then your main entree, which focuses on your proteins and stuff like that. So our portions are a little bit smaller. Like if you go to another Italian restaurant, you're going to be getting about 8 ounces of pasta, and it's just one plate of food. We want you to not walk out here feeling bloated, but also that you've been able to taste multiple things on the menu. So yeah, I mean, we've done marsala, but we do our different versions. We'll stuff it, serve it with, different types of mushrooms. We work with Haifa Foods. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I have, yes.
Yeah, so we get all of our truffles. We have morels, chanterelles. He gets us great product.
I love on the menu it says Italian sushi, and then it lists the ingredients, and one of them is chanterelles, and then it's crossed out, and you wrote in morels.
Yeah.
I imagine that's because...
Will be changing, yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of a testament to exactly what you're saying of using what's available and fresh and in season. Looking at some of the stuff on here. So you have seafood tortellini at Brodo. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
What is Brodo?
So Tortellini brodo is a classic Italian dish from Emilia Romagna. It's just little pasta stuffed with, it's usually like prosciutto or pork or something like that. Brodo just means broth in Italian.
I probably could have guessed that.
So it's literally like a soup, kind of. Like I said, it's just the tortellini and the brodo, but we did our spin on it. We do a seafood version of it. So we get squid ink pasta, and we make the tortellini, which has like a potato and basil and seafood filling.
Wow.
Which is another variation of a stuffed pasta from Sardinia, which is called colagione, and that has mint and potato in it. So I kind of took both of those dishes and combined them. So then it comes with Maine lobster, mussels, clams. Next week we're gonna get some shrimp and put that in there, and then we get the fish bones from the fish that we have, and then we make a stock and then make a consomme, which is like a very clarified stock, and then it's got so much flavor. It's clear when you pour it out, and we do it table side now. So we pour the broth table side. We bought these tea kettles. Excuse me, tea kettles, and then we put some dry anchovies in there, some fresh herbs, and then pour it table side.
Wow.
But there's a lot of flavor in it. It's just like a flavor bomb. You want to say umami or whatever you would like to say, but so that was our spin on that dish.
And so, of course you're a chef, you have technical knowledge of how to cook these things and whatnot, but it seems like you also have kind of an understanding of the historical and regionality of Italian cuisine. It's not just, okay, here's some Italian dishes, here's our take on them. How did you develop that depth of knowledge for Italian cuisine specifically?
Like I said, it was a passion. I mean, I worked at all these different restaurants, mainly Italian restaurants, and then just studying. I'm not gonna lie to you, when I first started cooking, YouTube showed me a lot. It was like, that was my schooling, was working on the job and watching YouTube videos of how to do different things. When I started working on the waterfront, the Italian restaurant, I remember because they would make pasta for specials, like handmade pasta for specials, and I wanted to learn how to make pasta, so I would literally go home every day after working 12-hour shifts and teach myself how to make something. I would pick, I'd read books, pick something, how to make this shape, or how does this dough, different pasta shapes, have the hydration in the dough has to be a little bit different. And I would go home and just make pasta every day, and then my knowledge really took a leap when I met Enzo in Texas. He was from Italy, Turin, Italy, and when I started working with him, the knowledge of like the regional aspect of everything is what I learned a lot from him. And the knowledge that he gave me, that's when I started buying more books and started reading it and, taking what he gave me and, branching out on my own and learning more. But yeah, I mean, it's just reading books. And it's funny because the one thing I don't like to read.
Oh, really?
I'll be honest, I really don't like to read. I'll read something about sports and food. That's about it,
That's the wonderful thing about YouTube, though, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I learned so much watching YouTube, and obviously from the chefs that that I worked with. I worked with a lot of great chefs, and was blessed in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, it also helps tell a story to our customers. That it's not just here's a plate of food. We try to ask the customers not to change anything, because it's not like we just went back there. Hey, this might be good. Let's just put it on the plate.
Sure.
The sous chef James, we've been blessed to bring him aboard. Great wealth of knowledge. He's been cooking for probably about 14 years or something like that.
Wow.
And when we brought him aboard, it really took our pasta program to the next level.
And you do all the pastas in-house?
Yeah, we make all of our pastas in-house.
Wow.
We have a pasta extruder for our extruded pasta, and then all the other, like the tortellini and raviolis and stuff, we make by hand.
Wow.
The gnocchis we roll by hand. And it's been like I said, it's been a blessing. And having the help with James, and then we got this kid, Michael, who used to work with us, had to go back home. He was gone for, 3 months?
Probably like 6.
Yeah, or maybe longer. Time flies when
you're making pasta.
Yeah. His mom got sick, so we had to go back home, take care of her, and then we ended up having a position open, and I called him, and I was like, hey, we need you to come back. He's only 20 years old,
Wow.
But and he's only been cooking for 2 years, but he's very smart, and he listens, he pays attention, and we brought him back and plugged him into pasta and for cooking pasta and stuff like that, and it's been great. I mean, the kitchen's been the strongest it's been since we've opened. We've had some great guys in here before. You know, some people go different directions, but and then the front of the house, the staff, Brock has brought everybody together in the front of the house with a wine program, and I have 3 of my family members that work in the front of the house.
Oh, really? Yeah. Nice.
And that can kind of segue into the name when we were naming this place. We were both thinking about it, bouncing names off, and I said, Brock, how about, Famiglia, because you're around your people that you work with more than you're around your family. And eventually your staff, the people you work with become kind of a family. And then I was like, think about it. And then probably like a week later, we just decided. I was like, all right, that's what it's going to be.
I like it. Especially, it's not too hard to figure out that the name has to do with family, but hearing that that's kind of the inspiration behind it. And not only the inspiration, but how you're running the business is good to know. We mentioned a little bit earlier that the wine program is all Italian wines. If you would, break down a little bit more kind of why you select what wines you select and what your goal is with the curation.
So like I had mentioned before, we try to keep it as natural as possible, try to keep it, the producers that care about their wines. Unfortunately, a lot of California wine producers are using mega purple concentrates, acid, basically adding stuff to their wines to make it taste the same every single year. Whereas in Italy, France, most old world places, they don't allow irrigation because that water is for cleaning the equipment afterwards. But, you can't water your plants unless, very rarely, I think Bordeaux allows it. But
so it would be like rainwater instead.
Correct. Okay. So each year is going to taste different from the year before. So depending on if you have good rain, if you have too much rain, if you don't have, if you have too much clouds, stuff like that, that's going to determine whether it's a good year or a bad year. So certain wines could be delicious from one year and terrible the next year. And then we're also working with majority natural producers, whereas they don't add any sulfites. Sulfites are a preservative. They're found in anything from raisins to a lot of other foods that you eat on a regular basis, so they're not terrible for you, but wine producers do add them in to keep that red color for your red wines. So if a wine producer hasn't figured out how to work with those sulfites yet, or keep those sulfites out but also keep the wine higher quality, then you're going to notice issues with the wine. But for the most part, we're working with this great company called the Natural Wine Company, where all of their wine is natural. They're very focused on importing wines that kind of fit into our bills, where quality wine produced for not exorbitant prices, but also focused on end all quality over quantity.
Is the sulfites the predominant or the only thing that would determine whether a wine is considered natural or not, or are there other things that are called into play?
So I don't think there's an actual definition of what a natural wine is. So sometimes people can use it to mean that the winery is biodynamic or organic, whereas they're carbon neutral. So I think that natural wine is kind of a loose term at the moment. But like I was mentioning with the mega purple, the grape juice concentrate that they can add in, or sometimes they'll add in, I believe it's ascorbic acid. So depending on if the grape juice at the end of the season has too high a sugar content, they'll add acidity into it. If there's too high acid content, they'll add sugar into it. So it just kind of depends. But we try to avoid wineries that do that process.
Well, and obviously it creates a lot of issues for wineries, maintaining a level of quality that they feel justified in selling. At least that's what I would think as a non-winery owner. Of course, that also introduces complications for you curating a wine list, but I don't know why people wouldn't want those things. I think it's just that most people are uneducated to the fact that those types of things exist. And I think in terms of the word terroir, how could you really have that without, like, if you're adding certain things to affect the flavor and whatnot, you're basically taking that entire, concept out of the wines that you're producing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So, and then you also have a cocktail program as well, correct?
That's correct.
Could you talk a little bit about that as well?
So right now we're just focused on pre-Prohibition era cocktails.
Oh, really?
So a lot of the classics just done well, kind of like our food menu, just focus on the classics, execute them well with high quality ingredients. Liquor program kind of similar to the food program, try to keep it as local as possible. So, we have a local ramen house, a few different local products in that realm, and then in terms of all of our lime, lemons, oranges, citrus, stuff like that, that's all locally produced.
Nice.
So yeah.
So we've covered a lot of your guys' history, obviously, this concept as well. Is there anything else that people should know when they're coming in for a dinner here?
And Brock and I know we both agree on it. We just want people to know that there's a lot of love and passion that goes into this. It's not just, I told Brock when we were going to move here, I don't just want to open up doors and let people come in. I want that to be an experience. I want them to be treated like they are part of our family. We wouldn't serve anything to anybody that we wouldn't eat, or, that we don't, the standards are set high. Mm-hmm. And we also kept the prices, we still got to make money.
Sure.
But we wanted to keep the prices reasonable for, the quality of food that we're serving. I mean, we got Perigord truffles right now. Those are $900 a pound. We put them on the menu. We're able to price things out, certain things, balance certain things out on the menu so we can, charge reasonable prices for the food. And that's just the biggest thing that we're really trying to also pull from the community, and that was one of the biggest things that we wanted to do with opening up this restaurant, and just give people the best product that we possibly can, and know that it's not just thrown together. Most of our recipes are tested out for about a week, maybe 2 weeks before we put it on the menu.
Wow.
Then it's made with love, love and passion.
So last question for you guys. There's a piano over there. I imagine you have a happy hour as well. Maybe you don't. What's your guys' kind of schedule and any specials you may have, live music, things like that?
So currently we don't have any plans for that just because of the construction going on out front. So once the construction's done, we'll start having live music come in.
Okay.
We're in talks with a couple of semi-famous pianists to come in and do a little show. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing right now, our obstacle is the construction that's going on in the front of the building. I mean, that's been going on for 2 months now. It was supposed to happen in the summer, which made more sense.
Yeah.
But they just dropped it on us in the last minute, and it's just, I mean, the building doesn't look okay. So it's been difficult, but I mean, it's also, just part of the restaurant industry. There's always ups and downs and stuff, but with overall the restaurant and how it's formed and what it's becoming, I feel we're blessed, and I know Brock and I are happy about it.
Absolutely. Well, and anyone listening and interested in coming here should not be deterred by that at all, because not only do the food and beverages sound great, but as soon as you come in here, it's a beautifully designed restaurant. It feels very cozy and warm and elegant. And you don't really expect that coming in because of the construction and whatnot, but as soon as you get in here, it seems like a wonderful place to have dinner, so I can't wait to stop in.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, unless you guys have anything else you wanted to add, it was a pleasure sitting down with you.
We just appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.